The Chicago rain fell in sheets, turning the downtown streets into rivers of gray. Riley Harper clutched her portfolio against her chest, trying to keep her printed resume from getting soaked as she rushed into the gleaming tower of glass and steel. She was already 10 minutes late for her interview at Sterling Design Studio, and her anxiety was threatening to overwhelm her completely. The elevator directory was confusing, multiple companies occupied the building. Riley squinted at the faded print. Sterling Design Studio, 22nd floor. She jabbed the button and watched the numbers climb, her reflection in the polished doors showing a 25-year-old woman trying desperately to look professional despite the rain-frizzed hair and damp blazer. At 25, Riley should have been thriving with her graphic design degree. Instead, she was applying for receptionist positions, watching her dreams slip away with each rejection letter. Her mother's medical bills had consumed her savings, and desperation had become her constant companion. The elevator dinged. 22nd floor. Riley stepped out into a corridor of sleek minimalism, polished marble floors, modern art on the walls, soft lighting that screamed expensive taste. But something felt off. This didn't look like a design studio. It looked like corporate headquarters. She checked her phone. The email said 22nd floor, suite 2200. Riley walked down the hallway, her heels clicking softly. Most doors were closed, but at the end of the corridor, one stood slightly ajar. Through the gap, she could hear a voice, deep, authoritative, clearly in the middle of a phone conversation. Taking a breath, Riley knocked softly and pushed the door open. The office was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of Chicago's skyline. Modern furniture in chrome and black leather created an atmosphere of power and success. And behind an enormous mahogany desk sat a man who made Riley forget every word of her practiced introduction. He was in his mid-30s with dark hair perfectly styled, sharp cheekbones, and piercing hazel eyes that seemed to assess everything in an instant. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Riley's entire year of rent, and he radiated the kind of confidence that came from owning the world. He looked up from his phone call, and for a moment, they simply stared at each other. Riley felt something electric pass between them, recognition of a sort, though they'd never met. "I'll call you back," the man said into his phone, not breaking eye contact with Riley. He set it down with deliberate care. "You must be the candidate. Please, sit." Riley's mind raced. Candidate? She'd expected a casual design studio interview, not this corporate intensity. But she needed a job desperately, and he seemed to be expecting someone. Maybe Sterling Design had relocated to a more professional space. She sat carefully in the leather chair across from his desk, placing her portfolio on her lap with trembling hands. "I'm Alexander Hunt," he said, studying her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "I apologize for the short notice. My assistant has been pressuring me for weeks to fill this position, and frankly, I wanted it settled today." Alexander Hunt. The name rang a distant bell, but Riley couldn't place it. "Of course. I appreciate the opportunity. Your background is unusual for this role," Alexander continued, glancing at what appeared to be notes on his tablet. "But my assistant assured me you came highly recommended. Tell me why you think you're qualified." Riley's throat went dry. This definitely wasn't about being a receptionist at a design studio. But she'd come this far, and she needed this job, whatever it was. She opened her portfolio, her voice finding strength. "I believe in creating environments where creativity and efficiency intersect. I'm highly organized, detail-oriented, and I excel under pressure. I understand that first impressions matter, and I'm skilled at managing multiple priorities while maintaining professionalism." Alexander's eyebrow raised slightly. "That's an interesting perspective. Tell me about your experience with high-stakes situations." "I've managed challenging clients, tight deadlines, and complex projects. I'm adaptable and quick-thinking. I believe in solutions, not excuses. Before Alexander could respond, the door burst open without warning. 3 men in expensive suits entered, older, distinguished, carrying the authority of board members. They stopped short when they saw Riley. "Alexander," one of them said, his tone sharp, "we need to discuss the quarterly reports. The investors are getting anxious about the merger, and they're raising concerns about your personal life again." "Gentlemen," Alexander said smoothly, standing. "I'd like you to meet Riley Harper. My fiancée." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Riley's eyes widened in shock, her mouth opening to protest. But Alexander's hand found the small of her back, warm and firm, guiding her to stand beside him. The touch sent electricity through her despite her confusion. "Fiancé," one board member repeated, surprise evident. "Alexander, you never mentioned." "It's recent," Alexander interrupted, his voice carrying easy confidence. "We wanted to keep it private until the right moment. But I suppose there's no better time than now." The men exchanged glances, clearly suspicious but unable to challenge directly. They offered stiff congratulations and left, their voices trailing down the hallway in hushed conversation. The moment the door clicked shut, Riley spun to face Alexander. "What just happened? Why did you tell them I'm your fiancé?" Alexander moved back to his desk, his expression unreadable but his eyes holding something calculating. "Because I need you to be." "That's insane. You don't even know me." "I know you need a job," Alexander said calmly, sitting on the edge of his desk. "You came here for an interview, which means you're looking for work. And I need a solution to a problem that's been affecting my company for months." "What problem?" "The board has been pressuring me to settle down, to show stability for the investors. They think a married CEO is more trustworthy, more reliable. It's archaic, but it affects my business." Riley felt her world tilting. "So you just decided to lie?" "Not lie. Create an arrangement." Alexander pulled out his phone, making a quick note. "I'm proposing a business deal. You pretend to be my fiancé for 6 months. Public appearances, family dinners, corporate events. In exchange, I'll pay you $25,000 per month, provide accommodation in my penthouse, and when our arrangement ends, I'll help establish your career in whatever field you choose." $25,000 a month. Riley's mind raced through the calculations. In 6 months, she could pay off her mother's medical bills, rebuild her savings, maybe even start her own design business. "This is absolutely crazy," she whispered. "Agreed," Alexander said. "But is it any crazier than whatever brought you to my door today? I'm offering you a chance to change your life, Riley. All you have to do is pretend to love me for 6 months." Riley looked at this stranger, this powerful, intense man who just upended her entire world. She thought of her mother's medical bills, her empty bank account, her dreams gathering dust. "I need time to think," she heard herself say. Alexander wrote a number on a business card and handed it to her. His fingers brushed hers briefly, and Riley felt that electric jolt again. "Call me by tomorrow morning. But understand this, Riley, if you agree, we do this properly. No half measures. We have to make everyone believe we're completely in love." Riley nodded mutely and left his office, her heart pounding. In the elevator, she stared at the business card, Alexander Hunt, CEO, Hunt Industries. Hunt Industries. The tech and real estate conglomerate worth billions. She just accidentally interviewed with one of Chicago's most powerful men. And he'd just offered her the role of a lifetime. Riley called Alexander at 8 a.m. the next morning. "I'll do it," she said simply, her voice steadier than she felt. "Good. My penthouse, noon today. We need to discuss terms." 3 hours later, Riley sat in Alexander's sprawling downtown penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views that made her small apartment seem like a closet. Alexander slid a thick contract across the glass coffee table. 6 months from today, our engagement ends. 25,000 per month, plus this penthouse. All expenses covered. We maintain separate bedrooms. No romantic involvement beyond what's necessary for appearances. Complete discretion. Riley read every word, her hands trembling slightly. This money would save her mother's life. She signed with a pen that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "Welcome to the performance," Alexander said, extending his hand. His grip was warm and firm. "Let's make it convincing." He showed her to a guest suite that was larger than her entire apartment. "This is your space. I'm down the hall. Make yourself comfortable." That evening, they created their story. "Art gallery charity auction, 4 months ago," Alexander said, making notes. "I bid on one of your pieces. We talked all night." "That's actually believable," Riley admitted. "I did have work in a charity auction 4 months ago." "I know. I bought 3 of your pieces." Riley stared at him. "You researched me?" "Thoroughly. If we're doing this, we do it right." Their first public appearance came within 72 hours. A black-tie gala at the Four Seasons. Alexander sent a stylist who transformed Riley with a midnight blue gown that hugged her curves and made her feel like someone else entirely. When she emerged from her suite, Alexander stopped mid-sentence in his phone conversation. His eyes traveled over her slowly, and Riley saw genuine appreciation there before his expression smoothed into neutrality. "Perfect," he said quietly. "Remember, we're madly in love. Stay close, smile, and follow my lead." At the gala, Alexander's hand never left hers, or her waist, or the small of her back. His touch was constant, warm, proprietary. Riley found herself leaning into him naturally, surprised by how right it felt. Alexander. Finally settling down. A silver-haired businessman approached with a martini. "Smart move for the merger talks. And who's this stunning woman?" "This is Riley," Alexander said, pulling her closer. "The woman who somehow agreed to put up with me permanently." His smile was perfectly calibrated, affectionate but not excessive. Riley played her part beautifully, laughing at appropriate moments, answering questions with their rehearsed story. But when Alexander's hand moved to her waist, guiding her through the crowd, her pulse quickened in a way that had nothing to do with acting. The real test came when Alexander's business partner Warren cornered them. 4 months, huh? Funny, I've never heard Alexander mention you until this week." Riley smiled smoothly. "Alexander likes to keep his personal life private. But yes, we met at the Morrison Gallery charity auction. He outbid everyone for my abstract cityscape series." Warren's eyes narrowed. "What did Alexander bid?" 75,000, Riley said without hesitation. "For 3 pieces. He said they reminded him of Possibility, The City at Dawn." Alexander's hand tightened slightly on her waist, impressed. She'd guessed correctly, he'd actually bought her work. Warren finally nodded, seemingly satisfied. As he walked away, Alexander leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. "Well done. I actually did say that about your work." Riley looked up at him, their faces inches apart. "You meant it?" "Every word." The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither expected. Then Alexander stepped back, clearing his throat. "We should circulate." That night, back at the penthouse, Alexander poured them both wine. "You were incredible tonight." "Thank you." He reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering on her cheek. Riley's breath caught. "It was easier than I expected." "Because you're a natural actress?" "Maybe," Riley whispered. "Or maybe because it didn't feel like acting." Alexander's eyes darkened with something intense. They stood frozen, the space between them crackling with tension. Then both pulled back simultaneously, retreating to opposite sides of the room. "I should get some sleep," Riley said quickly. "Right. Big day tomorrow." As Riley lay in her luxurious bed that night, she touched her cheek where Alexander's fingers had been, and worried that 6 months might not be long enough, or might be far too long. 2 months into their arrangement, Riley woke to find fresh coffee waiting in the kitchen, her preferred vanilla latte, made exactly how she liked it. Alexander had started this ritual weeks ago, and it had become her favorite part of the morning. "Morning," Alexander said, looking up from his tablet. He wore reading glasses that made him look softer, more approachable. "Sleep well?" These small intimacies had become their norm. Morning coffee, late-night conversations about dreams and regrets, comfortable silences that felt natural rather than awkward. One evening, Alexander found Riley crying in her suite. "What's wrong?" "My mother's treatment isn't working. The doctors say there's an experimental therapy, but insurance won't cover it. It costs $200,000. Alexander pulled her into his arms without thinking. "We'll figure it out." 3 days later, Riley received a call from the hospital. An anonymous donor had paid for the experimental treatment in full. She stormed into Alexander's home office. "You paid for my mother's treatment?" "Yes. That wasn't part of our deal." Alexander stood, moving around his desk toward her. "I care about you, Riley. Is that so hard to believe? We have a contract. This is business." "Then I'm terrible at business," Alexander said, taking her hands, "because somewhere along the way, this stopped being business for me." Riley's breath caught. Before she could respond, Alexander's phone rang. His best friend's wedding was that weekend. They'd be attending as a couple. At the wedding reception, after champagne and speeches, a slow song began. Alexander led Riley to the dance floor, pulling her close. They swayed together, their bodies fitting perfectly. "I wish this were real," Alexander whispered against her hair. Riley looked up at him, her heart pounding. "Sometimes I forget it isn't." They kissed. Not for show, not for an audience. Just them, under the string lights, losing themselves in a kiss that felt like truth. Back at the penthouse, they stood in the hallway between their rooms, the air thick with tension. "We should talk about what's happening between us," Alexander said, his voice rough. Before Riley could respond, the elevator dinged. A stunning woman in a red dress stepped out, tall, sophisticated, coldly beautiful. "Hello, Alexander," she said with a smile like a blade. "Surprised?" "Vanessa." Alexander's voice went flat. "What are you doing here?" Vanessa's eyes swept over Riley dismissively. "I heard about your little engagement." "How quaint." She moved closer to Alexander, her hand on his chest. "We both know this is just a phase. You'll come back to me eventually. You always do." "Vanessa and I were engaged before," Alexander explained tightly. She ended it. "I made a mistake," Vanessa said, her voice honeyed. "But I'm ready now. We make sense, Alexander. We're from the same world. Not like." She glanced at Riley, "Whatever this is." Riley felt something crack inside her chest. Alexander had been engaged before. He'd loved someone else, someone polished and perfect and from his world. "Riley is my fiancé," Alexander said firmly. "What we had is over, Vanessa. Please leave." After Vanessa left, Riley couldn't meet Alexander's eyes. "You loved her. Once. A long time ago. Do you still?" Alexander reached for her, but Riley stepped back. "I need to think." She retreated to her room, leaving Alexander standing alone in the hallway, and wondered if what they had was real, or if she was just another role he was playing. Riley couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m., she got up for water and heard Alexander on the phone in his study. "The arrangement ends in 4 months, he said quietly. "I need everything ready by then." Riley's heart shattered. He was already planning the end. This had all been business for him while she'd been falling stupidly in love. The next morning, Riley was cold and distant. Alexander noticed immediately, but she deflected every question. She needed to protect her heart before it was too late. Then disaster struck. A business rival leaked rumors to the press, Hunt Industries CEO's engagement a sham. Tabloids ran stories questioning the relationship's legitimacy. Hunt Industries stock dropped 15% in a day. Alexander's board called an emergency meeting. Riley stood outside the conference room as raised voices filtered through. The investors are spooked. They want proof of a genuine relationship. Then they'll get it, Alexander said. That evening, he found Riley packing. What are you doing? Leaving. The contract is obviously over. What are you talking about? I heard you on the phone. Planning for when the arrangement ends. Riley, I was planning a proposal. A real one. After the contract ended, I was going to ask you to actually marry me. Riley froze. What? I fell in love with you, Alexander said, his voice breaking. This stopped being fake for me months ago. Every morning coffee, every late-night conversation, every moment, it's all been real. Then why didn't you tell me? Because I was afraid. I'm a billionaire CEO who can negotiate multi-million-dollar deals, but I was terrified to tell you how I feel. And now it's too late. The board wants proof our relationship is genuine, and there's only one way to convince them. What way? Actually get married. Right now. For real. Riley's heart pounded. You want to marry me for your company? I want to marry you because I love you. Alexander shouted, his control finally breaking. The company, the board, the stock price, none of it matters if I lose you. How can I believe that? Riley cried. You're only proposing because you need to save face. Then don't believe it. Leave. I won't stop you. Alexander's voice went quiet. I'd rather lose everything than force you into something you don't want. Riley left, returning to her old apartment. It felt impossibly small after the penthouse, impossibly lonely without Alexander. 3 days passed. She was miserable, second-guessing everything. Then Alexander's brother Carter showed up with a folder. Before you make any permanent decisions, you should see this. Inside were documents dated weeks before the scandal, a proposal plan, a ring receipt, notes in Alexander's handwriting, ways to tell Riley I love her without scaring her away. That phone call you overheard? Carter said. He was talking to a proposal planner. He's been trying to figure out how to ask you genuinely for 2 months. Riley stared at the papers, tears streaming down her face. She'd misunderstood everything. Where is he? Company headquarters. Emergency board meeting. He's about to resign. Riley ran. Riley burst into the Hunt Industries boardroom, breathless and disheveled. 12 board members stared at her in shock. Alexander stood at the head of the table, resignation letter in hand. Riley, what are you? I love you, she shouted. I'm in love with you, and I've been an idiot. The board members exchanged glances. Alexander's face transformed with hope. Riley walked to the center of the room, addressing everyone. Our engagement started as a business arrangement. I won't lie about that. But somewhere between the performances and the pretending, it became real. I fell in love with a man who makes me coffee every morning, who paid for my mother's treatment without asking for anything in return, who sees me, really sees me, in a way no one else ever has. She pulled out her phone, showing her digital art portfolio. I've been sketching him for 2 months. Every expression, every moment. You don't draw someone this way unless you're in love with them. One board member leaned forward, examining the sketches. These are, quite detailed. Because I fell for him, Riley said simply. Not his money, not his position. Him. The man who geeks out over architecture, who can't cook to save his life, who pretends to be cold but has the warmest heart I've ever known. Alexander crossed the room and kissed her. Right there, in front of the entire board. It was deep and passionate and real, no performance, no pretense. When they broke apart, he whispered, "I love you. Really, truly love you. I know. I'm sorry I doubted you." The board chairman cleared his throat. Well. That was convincing. Another board member chuckled. My wife and I actually started with a fake relationship bet. Been married 35 years now. The board voted unanimously to accept the relationship and retain Alexander as CEO. 3 months later, Alexander proposed properly at Riley's first solo art exhibition, a showing he'd funded not as control, but as support. He got down on one knee in front of her painting titled "The Wrong Door." "Riley Harper, will you actually marry me? For real this time?" "Yes. 1,000 times yes." Their wedding 6 months later was intimate and perfect. Riley's mother, now healthy thanks to the treatment, walked her down the aisle. She looked radiant in a simple ivory gown she'd designed herself. In his vows, Alexander said, "You walked through the wrong door and changed my entire life. You taught me that love isn't a weakness or a distraction, it's the point of everything." Riley's vows made everyone cry. "I came looking for a job and found a home. Found myself. Found you. Best wrong door I ever walked through." 1 year later, Riley stood in their penthouse, painting. Alexander watched from the doorway, his hand resting on her growing belly. Their daughter would arrive in 3 months. Thinking about anything in particular, he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Riley leaned back against him, looking at her canvas, a painting of a woman standing before 2 doors, one clearly marked, one mysteriously ajar. "Just thinking about fate," she said. "How sometimes the biggest mistake is exactly where you're meant to be." Alexander kissed her temple. "The wrong door led me to you. I'd walk through it again every single time." As sunset painted Chicago in gold and rose, Riley added the final touches to her painting. The woman in the image was walking through the mysterious door, toward a future she couldn't see but was brave enough to embrace. Sometimes getting lost is how you find yourself. Sometimes the wrong door is exactly right.